If you're watching this channel, it's because you don't enjoy watching the world squander what Christendom built, but you want to do your part. And chances are you've heard me mention a great means by doing just that. Email made by and for Catholics. Check out fidei.email. That's FIDEI.email. Built for Catholic individuals, families, organizations, and groups. They're private, secure, and of course, they're Catholic. And they're offering 2 months off on your first year for an annual subscription if you enter the coupon code Return to Tradition without spaces. That's the name of this channel, without spaces, at checkout. Synod on Synodality, based out of Rome, involving the universal church throughout the entire Western world, has had heavy influence by the German Synodal Way, which launched years before the Synod on Synodality. The German Synodal Way launched in 2019. It went through the events of 2020, remotely for the most part, but then continued after everything kind of went back to as close to normal as it was ever going to get. The German Synodal Way has promoted deaconesses, priestesses, lay management of dioceses, the laity having a say in who becomes their bishop and who gets ordained a priest. And on and on and on and on it goes. Many of these subjects have been touched on by the Synod on Synodality, some of them dismissed, others fully embraced, such as the blessings for the James Martin crowd as outlined in Fiducia Supplicans. That was promoted by the German Synodal Way in a much more strident way. They wanted full recognition of the secular parity of holy matrimony that crowd has access to in Germany and in most of the Western world. The Church, through Francis, said no to that, but instead gave a blessings for relationships and couples and individuals, despite whatever Francis may have said on the subject on 60 Minutes. The document's very clear on that, and he contradicted the document. But much of this of the Synod on Synodality is a slightly moderated version of what's coming from the German Synodal Way. The Church in Germany and the Church in the United States give more individually as national bishops' conferences in terms of financial support to the Vatican than any other countries on the planet. It's full stop. There's nothing even close after those two countries. The Germans have a lot of influence and have had a lot of influence since the Second Vatican Council, where it was much of the German periti, these were the lay experts, influenced the events at Vatican II. The influence of Germany has never really waned. And their threat to go it alone without the Synod on Synodality and the broader universal church absolutely influenced some of the things that Francis has done in the aftermath of the German Synodal Way, which, by the way, looked like it was over, but is not over. It's continuing to go on, much like the Synod on Synodality. And I'm leading in with this because we have some interesting news out of the church in Germany. While their high-ranking, high-profile bishops, Bishop Botzing, Georg Botzing, the president of the German Synodal Way, and other high-profile bishops in Germany demand that the Vatican allow for greater blessings of the James Martin types and for deaconesses and the rest of it, there's now data from the church in Germany that their young priests object and will never go along with this. If you've ever wanted good news, here's some good news. The church in Germany will inevitably turn around because the young priests of today are the bishops of the future. We see this sign in other countries as well, that the seminaries are full of much more orthodox young men, even in the Jesuit seminaries. And trust me, my sources tell me that the Jesuits running the seminaries are not happy about this, but there's nothing they can do about it. Praise God for that. Headline from Gloria TV. Study: Young German priests reject German synod. It's simple. It's cut and dry. They don't accept what's going on. They want the faith. Whether they're conservative Novus Ordo or traditionalists, I often like the term traditionally minded as a broader term to describe things going on in the church when it comes to those who want the same faith that has always come before but can't agree internally on liturgical matters. They want the faith. They're the kind of priest you can go to confession with, or will be, and not worry that you're going to be given some bizarre advice that contradicts common sense and Catholicism. This scares, without question, the prelates in the church in Germany. And more broadly, this trend that we see across the Western world scares those in Rome, scares those in their own bishops' conferences. There have been reports in the past that some cardinals want Francis to issue some kind of rule about the seminaries to stop this from happening. But there's nothing they can really do about it, because over all of this looms the vocations crisis. There are simply not enough vocations to go around, and there are so many priests retiring that Rome's hand and all these bishops' hand is being forced to accepting these priests. They have to. Otherwise, they won't have priests. They won't have sacraments. And all that will be left will be a handful of holdouts in the ordinary form, if you want to call it that, and then the priests of the FSSP and the SSPX and similar organizations. That will be all that's left. So they have to accept these priests. They are stuck between the rock and the hard place that they created for themselves with their revolution in the church. It's a sign of good times and good hope to come. Here's the article. Quote, on the 17th of May, German bishops published a 308-page document on younger priests. The study surveyed 847 clerics who were ordained between 2010 and 2021 and 1,668 men who left the seminary. 153 priests and 18 former candidates responded. The average age of the priests was 37. Over 97% were born and raised in Germany. Just over half have 2 or more siblings. The results showed that 75.7% of the priests believed that real reform would be achieved by a greater focus on the liturgy and the content of the Catholic faith. A small minority of priests, 4.6%, said that no reform was needed. Only 25.7% of priests still believe that women should be invalidly ordained to the priesthood, and only 29.6% support betraying Christ's demand for celibacy. At a press conference, Matthias Selman, who conducted the survey, said it was clear that younger priests did not support the priorities of the German Synod. He described the majority of young priests as, quote, alienated from the attitudes and lacking values of modern, equaling decadent society. A similar study from the U.S. 6 months ago concluded that the proportion of young U.S. priests who admit to following the ideology of the oligarchs, progressivism, has dropped so low that the phenomenon has, quote, all but disappeared. End quote. Do you remember what Francis said on 60 Minutes? He said conservatism, he meant political and in the church, conservatism is a, we'll say, self-destructive attitude. He used a word that you can't use on YouTube under any circumstances. But he said self-destructive. And he did mean the church. The signs are there that this is going to turn around. For those of you despairing about things, don't. Stand first. Stand firm. Francis' papacy is likely to be over in the next couple of years. Maybe he'll be around. We'll get a long period like the end of John Paul II's papacy, where he was essentially infirm, but it's unlikely. And then afterwards, who knows? We may get another Francis, but we can outlast that too. The church is eternal. Christ provides. And we are getting better priests. Ones that you can feel comfortable going to confession with. Ones who, if their bishop is smart enough to read the signs of the times, will allow them to make their masses more reverent at the very least. And hopefully, we will get, in the not terribly distant future, at least a moderate, if not traditionally minded pope who will unshackle the traditional liturgy and allow it to get back to the position it was in, at least before Traditionis Custodes, if not also allowing it and enforcing Summorum Pontificum more strongly, where if you ask your priest for the traditional Mass and demonstrate that you're not alone in asking for it, that there's a fair number of you in a parish wanting it, that he has to learn it and provide for it. That was your right. That's all we really wanted, was to have the same Mass available to us that our ancestors had if we wanted it. And to have, for those of you attached to the ordinary form, the Novus Ordo, to have it actually offered in a way that's actually Catholic instead of as a joke, with due reverence given to God. People can debate the liturgy. I'm fond of debating the liturgy. I'm a strictly Latin Mass person, traditional Mass. But I understand where the other side comes from. The other side who in goodwill and good faith want their ordinary form. I understand where they're coming from. But that's not even being allowed. Remember, Traditionis Custodes even tried to put the brakes on more reverent forms of the new Mass by getting rid of the altar, trying to ban the altar rails and other things. Those young priests are the future. They will be bishops someday. And Rome is afraid of it. And they should be, because it means the revolution in the church is going to fail. Let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. Hey, like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. And if you've ever thought about supporting the work of Return to Tradition through Patreon or the YouTube join button, there are options in the description box below. It does help keep these daily messages coming, and I thank you for it. As always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.